Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Watt's Singletrack. Today we are going to be doing our 2,000 mile trail riding review of the Begode Master, and gonna be going over the things I like about it, the things I think they could improve, and the overall quality of the wheel. So be sure to stay tuned and check it out. I'm also super stoked to announce my new sponsorship, Bob's Stoke Shop in Central California. He can repair any of your PEVs, and he's worked on tons of my PEVs personally, my boards, and my EUCs. And also got to give a shout out to EVs, my EUC dealer up in Canada. Alright, let's get to the review here and start enjoying some footage. So to start off this review, I'm finally right over a little bit over 2,000 trail miles on my Begode Master. I originally bought a Samsung 50E pack wheel, and I did about 1,700 miles on that wheel, and I did end up having some issues with that, which we'll go into later. And then I also ended up getting a 40T version at 1900 watt hour, and that is the one that I am currently riding in this video. So I'm gonna start overall with things that I like, and then I'll go into things that I don't like about this wheel, and then I will go into things maybe that I think they could improve on. And then the overall quality of the wheel in general. So for starters, the biggest things that I love about this wheel is definitely going to have to be the torque and the power and the braking. This wheel, after I've got 2,000 plus miles on it, on nice dirt single track hard black diamond trails, this wheel is unrivaled in performance when it comes to acceleration and braking and torque. This wheel can pull uphill like no other, and it can also stop and skid the tire backwards going downhill. For an 80-pound machine, it feels incredibly nimble. The suspension just allows you to carry through sections. You can carry speed through sections that they're unimaginable on other wheels. You may be able to do it on a RS for 40, 50 yards, but it is not sustainable for 50 miles of trail riding. You would just be exhausted, and the wheel would be shaken to bits. The suspension is crucial for this type of riding, and really will make you a much better rider and help you learn how to navigate difficult terrain. Before I had suspension, so I used to ride a RS high torque, and I could ride a trail like this, but I would be riding it significantly slower, because you just get bucked off and kicked off the pedals. And even with really good, I use Kai pads on there to lock my feet in super tight against the studded pedals. You just can't sustain these kind of speeds on a non-suspension wheel on this difficult of a trail. And it will, I guess that kind of leads me into my next favorite thing about the Master, which is gonna have to be the fact that it has the tallest pedals on the market currently. No other wheel. The pedals are taller than a V11. They are taller than the S22. Coming from a RS high torque with the raised Russian pedal hangers, this wheel, it's insane the amount of height and clearance you have with the pedals. And what that does for a trail rider like myself and other people looking to get into trail riding is it allows you to take new lines that you could no longer, or with the RS you couldn't take these same lines. On the RS you really had to always take the high line because that guaranteed your pedals cleared everything. But with the Master, it allows you to dive down into the valleys and the chutes and the ravines and the little trenches and the ruts, and you have the pedal clearance to get through it. And then, yeah, you hit all the brake bumps, but the Master, the suspension soaks it up, and it just has the power to torque through everything. So overall, I thought the RS High Torque personally was the best trail wheel for what I like to do, and the Master has just blown my expectations away. It far exceeds the S20 or S22, which people already know has torque issues. People are saying it's similar to about 80% of the torque of a RS, which is sad. So if you want a torque wheel, you want a wheel that can deal with trails like this no problem and be able to over torque a landing and not be perfect everywhere, the Begode Master is definitely going to end up being the wheel for you. It just, hands down, it deals with everything that I throw at it. Whereas when I was on the S20, I felt like I definitely lacked the torque during hill climbs, and the braking was alright. It wasn't bad, but it's nothing like the Begode Master. So for me, I'm super impressed with this wheel overall. I really like the pedal height. The suspension is awesome. One thing I did find that I didn't like, that Begode doesn't really give you much instruction on what PSI to run the shock at. So I run my shock at 420 PSI, and people are gonna say that's really high. Well, I'm also doing some pretty extreme hard riding on the wheel, so I do need the extra pressure. And because the Begode shock doesn't go, the shock pump doesn't go up that high, I had to buy an aftermarket shock pump that would go up to 600 PSI so that I could push higher PSI into the shock. And once I did that, I alleviated all of my bottoming out issues. Unless I'm doing like a 5-foot drop, I'll bottom this thing out. But I'm also not really looking to do 5-foot drops. And there's also plenty of times where, as long as you bend your knees, you don't bottom out even at a lower PSI. I personally just really like the ultra high PSI and the really fast rebound, because it keeps the tire in constant contact with the ground, that's a really crucial aspect to trail riding. To build on tire contact patch time, I really do want to emphasize the reason the Begode Master is so much faster on trails than, say, a RS High Torque is specifically because of the suspension. Yes, the motor really helps, especially above 15 miles an hour. The Master outpulls the RS all day long. It'll hawk the RS and just leave it in the dust. You can pull up to 40 miles an hour on the trails like you pull up to 10 miles an hour unlimited torque on an RS. So, but the tire contact patch is what really makes this wheel so much faster, because essentially the suspension is constantly forcing the tire into the ground, and that guarantees that you're getting acceleration, braking, and turning. It means if the tire's touching the ground, it means you have grip. If you have grip, you can go fast. When your tire's in the air, I call that riding the bull. When you're hopscotching, bouncing down the trail, because that means you don't have contact time with the ground, so you don't have control over what's happening. And the less control you have, yeah, it's a little more fun to a point, but you're not as fast. And if you like to ride trails fast, the Begode Master will get you there. And now we will get into the bad, the things that I do not like and that I think Begode could definitely improve on. The shock in general, I think they could definitely improve on the rebound control because that part seems fairly easy to break. So would hope that they can improve on that. No, they did improve and beef up the rim significantly. I forgot to note that in the previous segment, but the rim is significantly beefed up. But the other thing would be the headlight, and they've addressed this on the most recent versions of it. So that part, okay, the headlight's significantly better. But the biggest thing that, it really grinds my gears is the taillight. The taillight sucks. You can't see it. The plastic is fragile and it's easy to break. But in reality, those are my biggest gripes about the Master. Beyond that, charging ports are easy to access. I guess the trolley handle could be better and definitely could be stronger, so that's something they could work on. But overall, I really like it. But because it's in the center of the wheel. But beyond that, those are really the main things I think Begode needs to improve on this wheel. And so I'll get into the last little bit here of my overall impressions of the Begode Master build quality in general. I will say the stock foam pads, if you're just an average Joe trying to putt around nice and slow, okay. And they feel really good. The pads they have a really nice feel, but they're not for any type of serious rider. But decent quality pads for stock pads. Definitely not the Kingsong S20 type locked in pads though. I'm really impressed overall with the initial design of this wheel. The pedal height, the batteries now are redundant to where there's battery redundancy versus the original first versions did not have battery redundancy. So Begode's made leaps and bounds of improvement on that aspect. I will also give them credit. They have redesigned and produced a V3 control board in a matter of months, whereas Kingsong can't redesign their board to deal with burning MOSFETs. But anyway, that's a video or another story for another video. But really impressed that Begode's managed to quickly address and redesign the control board issues that came up on the original V1 boards, and in general, the battery redundancy, that's huge, and they've beefed up the rim. So with all those changes, I'm super impressed. So I'm gonna finish the video out here with a little bit of a trail called Saw Pit out in Santa Cruz, riding with my buddies EUC Zach and Black Rock, aka Far Zone. So yeah. The Begode Master is a fantastic wheel. If you're looking for a wheel to ride trails the way I do and get into stuff like this, this wheel, I guarantee you, is more capable than the trail. The trail is no longer faster than the wheel. The wheel is much faster than the trail. So the responsibility is in your hands as the rider as to be safe and know your limits, because it is very easy to get out of hand on this wheel and go into stuff way too quick. So be sure to be a little bit cautious if and when you buy your Begode Master, and I really hope that you enjoy it and enjoyed this video, and I want to thank you for another 15 minutes of your time, and hope you return for some more Watts Singletrack.